The morning sun streamed through the blinds of the small diner just off Route 16, casting long shadows across the worn linoleum floor. Sergeant Maya Johnson wiped down the counter with practiced ease, her movements efficient after months of playing this role. The bell above the door jingled, and she looked up with the warm smile she had perfected, friendly but not too familiar. "Morning. Sit anywhere you like," she called out to the group of soldiers who entered, their uniforms crisp despite the early hour. They nodded and headed toward their usual booth by the window. Maya grabbed 4 menus and followed them, setting each one down with a cheerful, "Coffee to start?" This was her routine 6 days a week, serving eggs and coffee, wiping tables, and making small talk. But Maya wasn't just a waitress. The apron tied around her waist hid more than just order pads and pens. It concealed her true purpose at Lou's Diner. For the past 6 months, Sergeant Maya Johnson had been working undercover as part of Operation Watchful Eye, a military intelligence mission monitoring potential security threats near Fort Bennet. At 28, she had 7 years of distinguished service under her belt and specialized training that made her perfect for this assignment. Her commanding officer, Major Williams, had selected her personally. "Got plans for the weekend?" one of the soldiers asked as Maya poured his coffee. "Just the usual," she replied with a shrug. "Picking up extra shifts, trying to save up." The lies came easier now, a necessary part of maintaining her cover. What the soldiers didn't know, what nobody at the diner knew, was that Maya returned to base every night, filed reports on conversations she'd overheard, and analyzed patterns of behavior among the military personnel who frequented the establishment. Fort Bennet had experienced several information leaks over the past year, and intelligence suggested the diner served as a meeting point. Maya finished taking their orders and headed back to the kitchen. Through the service window, she could see Lou manning the grill, his large frame moving with surprising grace as he flipped pancakes and scrambled eggs. "Order up for table 7, he called out, sliding a plate across the counter. Lou had no idea about Maya's real job either. To him, she was just a hard-working woman who needed flexible hours and didn't complain about the modest pay. He appreciated her reliability and the way she handled difficult customers with ease, a skill Maya had developed during tense interrogations, not waitressing. The door jingled again, and Maya glanced up to see a group she didn't recognize. 3 men in civilian clothes but with military haircuts and bearing. New faces always put her on alert. She watched them from the corner of her eye as they settled into a booth across from her regular soldiers. "I'll be right with you," she called, grabbing coffee and heading their way. As she approached, she caught fragments of their conversation, something about security protocols and weekend leave. Their voices hushed as she neared. "Coffee?" she offered, already pouring. The man on the end, broad-shouldered with cold eyes, looked up at her with barely concealed suspicion. "Thanks," he said curtly, his gaze lingering a moment too long on her face as if trying to place her. Maya felt a flicker of unease but maintained her easy smile. This wasn't the first time she'd encountered wariness. As one of the few black women working near the base, she was used to being viewed with unwarranted suspicion. It was an unfortunate reality she'd faced both in civilian life and in the military, though she'd earned her rank through exceptional service and dedication. "My name's Maya. I'll be your server today. Need a few minutes with the menu?" she asked, her voice betraying none of her inner thoughts. "Yeah, we'll need a minute," another man replied, his tone noticeably warmer than his companion's. As Maya walked away, she felt the cold-eyed man watching her. Experience told her to make a mental note. This one might be trouble. Back behind the counter, she busied herself with filling salt shakers while discreetly observing the new arrivals. The man who'd regarded her with suspicion leaned forward, speaking intensely to his companions. She couldn't hear what he was saying, but his body language suggested disagreement. Maya's phone vibrated in her pocket, a special device provided by military intelligence, separate from her personal phone. She slipped into the break room to check it, a text from Major Williams. "New intel. Group from 5th Battalion arriving today. Potential connection to leak. Observe only," she typed back quickly. 3 men just arrived. Civilian clothes, military bearing. One showing signs of suspicion toward staff. Noted. Maintain distance. Regular check-in tonight. Maya slipped the phone back into her pocket and returned to the floor, her senses heightened but her demeanor unchanged. This was where her training really mattered. The ability to appear completely ordinary while remaining hyper-aware of her surroundings. The lunch rush began, and the diner filled with a mix of locals, truckers, and more military personnel. Maya moved efficiently between tables, balancing plates and refilling coffee cups. To everyone around her, she was just another waitress trying to make ends meet. Slightly overqualified, perhaps, but otherwise unremarkable. Only Maya knew how she spent her evenings. Not watching TV in a small apartment as her cover story suggested, but reviewing intelligence briefs in secure facilities on base. Only she knew that beneath her friendly smile was a mind cataloging conversations, connections, and anomalies that might reveal who was leaking sensitive information. During a rare, quiet moment, Maya wiped down the counter near where an older soldier sat nursing a cup of coffee. Technical Sergeant Rivera was a regular who always sat alone and often stayed for hours with just coffee and occasionally a slice of pie. "Doing okay today?" she asked, offering the coffee pot. Rivera nodded, pushing his cup toward her. "Can't complain. How about you? Still taking those night classes?" This was part of her cover. The story that she was working toward a degree in business administration through online courses. "When I can stay awake," she laughed. "Feels like I'm always either here or studying." "Keep at it," Rivera encouraged. "Education's the one thing nobody can take from you." Maya smiled genuinely at this. She liked Rivera. He was kind in a grandfatherly way and always tipped well despite his modest orders. She'd already cleared him of any suspicion months ago. The bell jingled again, and Maya looked up to see Staff Sergeant Chen enter. She'd served him several times before. Quiet, polite, always reading something on his tablet while he ate. Today, however, he wasn't alone. The cold-eyed man from earlier rose from his booth and moved to intercept Chen. Greeting him with a familiarity that caught Maya's attention, she moved closer, under the pretense of wiping nearby tables. "Didn't expect to see you here," she heard Chen saying. "Thought I'd check out the local spots before the training exercise," Cold Eyes replied. "This place came recommended." Maya kept her head down, appearing focused on her task while straining to hear more. The mention of a training exercise was interesting. There wasn't one scheduled that she knew about. Her instincts hummed with warning. She'd need to include this in tonight's report. The connection between Chen, who had access to classified communications, and the suspicious newcomer warranted further investigation. As the afternoon wore on, Maya continued her dual roles, efficient waitress and vigilant observer. When her shift ended at 4, she changed out of her uniform in the staff bathroom, switching the comfortable sneakers she wore for work to more stylish boots that matched her civilian outfit. The transformation was subtle but effective. Few would connect the waitress in the plain polo shirt and apron with the confident woman who now emerged in fashionable street clothes. "See you tomorrow." "Lou," she called as she headed out the back door. "Bright and early," he responded with a wave. Maya walked 3 blocks to where her car was parked. Never in the diner lot, a basic security measure. Once inside, she checked her surroundings before pulling out a secure laptop from under the passenger seat. She made quick notes about the day's observations while they were fresh in her mind, particularly the interaction between Chen and the suspicious newcomer. Only then did she start the car and begin the drive to Fort Bennet. At a certain point along the route, she would enable the security protocols that allowed her onto the base without revealing her cover operation to gate personnel. It was a careful dance she performed daily. As she drove, Maya reflected on the complexity of her position. The double life sometimes weighed heavily. The constant vigilance, the necessary deception, the way she had to swallow her pride when customers treated her dismissively because they saw only a waitress, not a decorated soldier. But then she remembered why she'd accepted this assignment. It wasn't just about catching a leak. It was about protecting her fellow soldiers. Every bit of classified information that reached the wrong hands put lives at risk. Lives of people she had trained with, served alongside, and sworn to protect. The gates of Fort Bennet appeared ahead, and Maya straightened her shoulders. For a few precious hours, she could be herself again. Sergeant Maya Johnson, military intelligence specialist, respected for her skills and dedication. Tomorrow, she would return to being just a waitress in the eyes of those who didn't know better, and maybe, just maybe, she would get one step closer to uncovering who was putting her military family in danger. Little did she know, the cold-eyed man had already begun forming his own suspicions about the too attentive waitress, with the perfect memory and the careful questions. The game was about to become much more dangerous. 3 weeks had passed since the cold-eyed man and his friends first walked into Lou's diner. Maya now knew him as Staff Sergeant Richards, and he had become a regular, always sitting in her section despite plenty of open tables elsewhere. She didn't like the way he watched her, like she was a puzzle he was determined to solve. "More coffee?" Maya asked, approaching his table where he sat with two companions she now recognized as Corporal Wilson and Private First Class Torres. Richards pushed his cup toward her. "You always remember exactly how we like our orders," he said, his tone somewhere between impressed and suspicious. "Got some kind of special memory?" Maya gave a practiced laugh. "I wish, just doing my job. When you serve the same folks every day, you pick things up." She kept her voice light, but her instincts were on high alert. This wasn't casual conversation. "Must be more to it than that," Richards pressed. "Yesterday, Torres mentioned his hometown once, and today you asked him how the weather was in Albuquerque." His eyes narrowed slightly. Pretty specific for someone who's just doing her job. Maya's heart beat faster, but her expression remained neutral. A rookie mistake. She'd remembered too much detail. "Good ears," she recovered smoothly. "My cousin moved there last year, so the name stuck with me. Small world, right?" Richards didn't look convinced, but Maya was saved by a loud crash from the kitchen. "Excuse me," she said, hurrying away. In the kitchen, Lou was picking up pieces of a broken plate. "Sorry about the noise," he said when he saw her. "Butterfingers today." Maya helped him clean up, grateful for the interruption. Richards was getting too interested in her, and that was dangerous for the mission. She needed to be more careful. When she returned to the dining area, Richards and his friends were huddled in conversation, their voices dropping to whispers as she approached. She caught only a fragment. Too convenient, don't you think? That evening, Maya drove to a different entrance of Fort Bennett than usual, taking extra precautions to ensure she wasn't followed. The conversation with Richards had left her unsettled. After parking in a secluded area of the base, she headed to the secure facility where Major Williams waited. "He's testing me," Maya explained after recounting the day's events. "Laying traps to see what I remember, how I respond." Major Williams frowned. "Does he suspect your real purpose, or just think you're gathering intel?" "Hard to say, but he's definitely suspicious of me." Maya ran a hand through her hair, a rare show of stress. "And there's something else. I overheard Richards talking with Technical Sergeant Chen about some kind of special training exercise next week that isn't on any official schedule." Williams typed notes into his computer. "Could be nothing, could be something. We've tracked 3 information leaks in the past month, all concerning troop movements and security protocols. If there's an unofficial exercise happening, it might be connected," Maya finished. "I'll keep my ears open." "Be careful," Williams warned. "If Richards is suspicious, he'll be watching you closely. Don't give him any more reasons to doubt your cover." The next morning, Maya arrived at the diner earlier than usual. She needed time to center herself, to fully step back into her waitress persona. Lou was already there prepping the grill. "You're early, sunshine," he greeted her. "Couldn't sleep," she replied truthfully. "Figured I might as well come in and help with setup." The morning rush came and went. By lunchtime, Maya had served dozens of customers, moving efficiently between tables with coffee pot in hand, all while maintaining her friendly, slightly tired waitress demeanor. No sign of Richards or his friends, which was both a relief and a concern. Where were they? Her question was answered at exactly 2:17 p.m. when the diner door opened and 5 uniformed soldiers entered. Richards, Wilson, Torres, and 2 men Maya didn't recognize. They chose a large corner booth, and Maya noticed how they positioned themselves. Richards facing the entrance, the others arranged so they could see the entire diner. Tactical seating, Maya thought. This wasn't a casual lunch. "Afternoon, guys," she greeted them, menus in hand. "The special today is meatloaf." Richards looked up at her, something cold in his expression. "We'll all have coffee for now." Maya nodded and went to get the coffee pot, using the moment to steady herself. Something felt off. When she returned to their table, the conversation stopped abruptly. "Here you go," she said, filling each mug. "Ready to order food, or do you need a minute?" "We'll need a bit," Richards said. "Waiting for someone else." Maya nodded and moved away but stayed within earshot, busying herself wiping down a nearby table. "That's her," she heard Richard say quietly. "Always hovering around, always listening." "Could be nothing," one of the unfamiliar men responded. "Waitresses are supposed to be attentive." "It's more than that," Richards insisted. "Too many coincidences. Too many questions that seem innocent but add up to something else. Trust me, I've been watching her for weeks." Maya's skin prickled. She needed to warn Major Williams immediately. Moving to another table, she pulled out her order pad and discreetly sent a text. "Situation escalating. Richards brought new people, openly discussing suspicions about me." The response came quickly. "Stay calm. Don't break cover. Back up on standby." The diner door opened again and Maya looked up to see Staff Sergeant Chen enter, carrying a folder under his arm. He spotted Richards and headed toward their table. Maya intercepted him with her brightest smile. "Hi there. Joining this group?" she asked, gesturing toward a clean coffee mug. Chen seemed startled by her appearance. Yes, thanks." As she poured his coffee, Maya noticed the folder was labeled classified in bold red letters. Her pulse quickened. What was Chen doing bringing classified documents to a public diner? "Can I get you anything else?" she asked, trying to peek at the folder without being obvious. "We're good." Richards cut in sharply. "We'll call you if we need anything." Maya nodded and walked away, but kept the group in her peripheral vision while she served other tables. The men had their heads together, occasionally glancing her way. Chen had opened the folder, keeping its contents shielded from view with his body. 45 minutes passed. The men ordered nothing but coffee, which Maya refilled periodically, each time trying to glimpse what they were discussing. During one refill, she distinctly heard Richard say, "She fits the profile. Right age, right background." Always asking about base operations, schedules, personnel. The implications were clear. Richards thought she was a spy. But for whom? And how much had he learned about her real identity? At 3:30 p.m., the group finally called for the check. As Maya brought it over, Richards looked her directly in the eyes. "You know, it's interesting," he said conversationally. "A waitress who knows exactly how everyone takes their coffee, remembers details most people would forget, and always seems to be listening when certain topics come up." Maya kept her expression neutral. "Just trying to give good service, and is that what you call it?" Richard's voice hardened. "Because some might call it gathering intelligence." The other men at the table shifted uncomfortably, but no one contradicted him. Maya laughed, making herself sound confused rather than nervous. "I'm not sure what you mean. I'm just doing my job." "Your job," Richards repeated. "Right." He placed cash on the table and stood up. "We'll see about that." After they left, Maya immediately texted Major Williams. Confrontation with Richards. He openly accused me of gathering intelligence. Mentioned my profile, background. "How much does he know?" The response was immediate. Return to base after shift. Emergency meeting. The rest of Maya's shift passed in a blur of anxiety. Had her cover been blown? Would months of careful work be wasted? Worse, what if Richards was connected to the information leaks and was now accelerating his timeline because of her? At 5 p.m., Maya changed out of her uniform and said goodbye to Lou, trying to act normal despite her racing thoughts. She walked her usual route to her car, constantly checking for anyone following her. Just as she reached her vehicle, a hand grabbed her arm. Maya spun around, instinctively shifting into a defensive stance only to find herself face to face with Richards. "Going somewhere, Maya?" he asked, making air quotes around her name. "Or whatever you're really called." She pulled her arm free. "What do you want?" "I'm off the clock and I don't appreciate being grabbed." "Drop the act," Richards said, his voice low and threatening. "We know what you're doing. Taking notes, asking questions, paying special attention whenever military matters come up." "I have no idea what you're talking about," Maya said firmly. "Now please move aside." Richards stepped closer. "I did some checking. There's no record of a Maya Johnson living at the address you gave Lou when you applied for the job. Your social media presence only goes back 6 months. You're a ghost." Maya's blood ran cold. He'd been investigating her. "You're making a mistake," she said calmly. "The mistake," Richards replied, "was thinking you wouldn't get caught. We've been watching you watch us, and now we have enough to report you to base security." "Report me?" Maya almost laughed at the irony. "For what?" Espionage, Richards hissed. Gathering intelligence on U.S. military operations. Tomorrow morning, I'm taking everything we have to Colonel Bennett himself. By this time tomorrow, you'll be in custody answering some very uncomfortable questions. He stepped back, a smug look on his face. Enjoy your last night of freedom, Waitress. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Maya standing next to her car, her mind racing through implications and options. She needed to get to Major Williams immediately. If Richards really did go to Colonel Bennett, who wasn't aware of her undercover operation, things could get very complicated very quickly. As she drove toward Fort Bennett, Maya's thoughts turned to the classified folder Chen had brought to the meeting. What was in it? Why share classified information in a public diner? The pieces weren't fitting together properly. One thing was certain, the game had changed. Richards had just escalated from suspicious customer to active threat. And Maya needed to decide her next move very carefully, before everything she'd worked for unraveled completely. The security checkpoint at Fort Bennett's east entrance was quiet as Maya pulled up. She rolled down her window, heart still racing from her encounter with Richards' ID. Please, the guard said, his expression neutral. Maya handed over her military ID, her real one, not the civilian license she used to maintain her cover. The guard scanned it and looked back at her with newfound respect. Good evening, Sergeant Johnson, he said, handing it back. Go on through. Once on base, Maya drove straight to the intelligence building. The encounter with Richards had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. He'd been investigating her, digging into her background, and had come close enough to the truth to be dangerous, just not in the way he thought. Major Williams was waiting for her in his office, his face grim. Tell me everything, he said once the door was closed. Maya recounted her confrontation with Richards word for word, including his threat to report her to Colonel Bennett in the morning. This complicates things, Williams said when she finished. If he goes to Bennett with accusations that you're spying, it could blow the entire operation before we identify the real source of the leaks. Should we tell Bennett the truth? Maya asked. Bring him into the loop? Williams shook his head. Not yet. The fewer people who know about this operation, the better our chances of catching whoever's been leaking classified information. He drummed his fingers on the desk. We need to get ahead of this. Did you see what was in the folder Chen brought to the meeting? No, they were careful to keep it hidden, Maya replied. But it was marked classified, which means they had no business bringing it to a diner in the first place. That's our opening, Williams said, leaning forward. We'll set up surveillance at the diner tomorrow. If Richards and his group return with more classified materials, we'll have grounds to question them officially. That might buy us time. Maya nodded, but something still bothered her. Sir Richards seemed so certain I was gathering intelligence. He said I fit the profile. What did he mean by that? Williams frowned. Could be nothing, just his own prejudice talking, or what? Or someone told him to watch for people asking questions, which would suggest he's connected to our leaks even if he's not the source. Maya thought back to all her interactions with Richards and his friends. There's something else, she said slowly. When Chen arrived today, he seemed surprised to see me, almost nervous. And I've noticed him meeting with different groups of soldiers over the past few weeks, always with folders or documents. Chen could be our link, Williams mused. We'll add him to the surveillance list. Maya's phone buzzed with a text. She checked it and her face paled. It's Lou from the diner. Some military police just came in asking questions about me. She looked up at Williams. Richards didn't wait until morning. Williams sprang into action, grabbing his phone. I need to make some calls. You stay here. The next hour was a blur of phone calls and hasty plans. By the time Williams returned, Maya was pacing the office. Here's the situation, Williams said. Richards went to the base military police with his suspicions about you. Claimed you were asking suspicious questions and potentially gathering intelligence on troop movements. They took his statement and sent officers to the diner to check your employment details. What do we do now? Maya asked. We adjust, Williams replied firmly. The MPs have requested your presence for questioning tomorrow morning at 0900. You'll go as Sergeant Johnson, not as Maya the waitress. Maya stared at him. Won't that blow my cover completely? The cover was already compromised. Now we use this to our advantage. Williams handed her a folder. Study this tonight. It contains everything you need to know for tomorrow. We're changing tactics, going from defense to offense. The next morning, Maya arrived at the military police headquarters in her full dress uniform, medals displayed, hair pulled back in a regulation bun. The staff sergeant at the front desk did a double take when she presented her ID. "Sergeant Johnson? They're waiting for you in interview room 2. Maya was escorted to a small room where 2 military police officers sat at a table. Their expressions shifted from professional neutrality to confusion when they saw her uniform. "Please have a seat, Sergeant," the older officer said, checking his notes. "I'm Captain Reynolds, and this is Lieutenant Garcia. We have some questions about your employment at a local establishment." Maya sat down, back straight, hands folded on the table. "I understand, sir. According to a report we received, you've been working as a waitress at Lou's Diner, while also asking questions about military operations. Can you explain this?" "Yes, sir, I can," Maya replied calmly. "I'm currently assigned to military intelligence under Major Williams. My position at the diner is part of an ongoing counterintelligence operation." The officers exchanged glances. "We have no record of such an operation," Lieutenant Garcia said. "It's classified, sir. Level 4 clearance required." Maya maintained eye contact. "Major Williams can verify my assignment if you contact him." Captain Reynolds frowned and was about to respond when the door opened. Maya didn't need to turn around to know who had entered. The sudden tension in the room told her everything. "What the hell is this?" Richard's voice came from behind her. "Why is she in uniform?" Maya remained facing forward, but she could hear multiple sets of footsteps entering the room. Richards had brought his friends. "Staff Sergeant Richards," Captain Reynolds acknowledged. "I don't recall inviting you to this interview." "You said you'd notify me when you brought her in," Richards argued, coming around to where Maya could see him. He stopped short when he saw her uniform, medals, and rank insignia. This is some kind of trick." Now Maya turned to look at him directly. "No trick, Staff Sergeant. Just the truth you didn't bother to discover before making accusations." Richards' face flushed red. "She's lying. This is a disguise, a way to avoid questioning. There's no way." The door opened again, and this time Major Williams entered, followed by a stern-looking Colonel Bennett. Everyone in the room immediately stood at attention. "At ease," Bennett said, looking around the room with clear displeasure. "Captain Reynolds, I understand you're questioning one of our intelligence operatives without proper clearance or authorization." Reynolds swallowed hard. "Sir, we received a report of suspicious activity and failed to follow proper channels to verify it." Bennett cut him off. "Major Williams has briefed me on Operation Watchful Eye. Sergeant Johnson's assignment was authorized at the highest levels." Maya watched Richards's face as the realization sank in. His expression morphed from anger to confusion to the beginning of fear. "Sir," Richards began, "I had legitimate concerns about a fellow soldier doing her job." Bennett interrupted. "A job that until an hour ago was classified above your clearance level." Williams stepped forward. "Colonel, with your permission, I'd like to ask Staff Sergeant Richards and his associates some questions of my own." Bennett nodded. "Proceed." Williams turned to the group, his gaze settling on each man in turn before landing on Richards. "Staff Sergeant, you brought a serious accusation against Sergeant Johnson. I'd like to know what evidence led you to believe she was gathering intelligence illegally." Richards shifted uncomfortably. "She was always listening to conversations about base operations, sir. Always asking questions, remembering details. That was her job," Williams pointed out. "But what interests me more is why you were discussing base operations in a public diner in the first place." Richards had no immediate answer. Williams continued, "And I'm particularly interested in why Technical Sergeant Chen brought classified documents to that same diner yesterday." All eyes turned to Chen, who had been silent until now. The man paled visibly. I don't know what you mean, sir," Chen stammered. "A folder marked classified was seen in your possession at Lou's Diner at approximately 1500 hours yesterday," Williams said. "Would you care to explain that?" Chen looked desperately at Richards, who avoided his gaze. Bennett's voice cut through the tension. "Lieutenant Garcia, please secure Technical Sergeant Chen's quarters and office immediately. Captain Reynolds, I want statements from everyone present at that diner meeting." Garcia hurried out while Reynolds nodded. "Yes, sir." Maya watched as Richards's plan to expose her backfired spectacularly. The man couldn't even look at her now. "Sergeant Johnson," Bennett addressed her directly, "I apologize for this interruption to your operation. Major Williams has briefed me on your excellent work these past months." "Thank you, sir," Maya responded. maintaining her professional demeanor despite the satisfaction she felt. "Sir?" Richards tried again, desperation creeping into his voice. "You can't possibly believe she was conducting an authorized intelligence operation. She's—" He trailed off, apparently realizing there was no way to finish that sentence that wouldn't dig his hole deeper. "She's what, Staff Sergeant?" Bennett asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "A decorated soldier with an exemplary service record? A trained intelligence specialist following orders? Or were you going to mention something else about Sergeant Johnson that influenced your suspicions?" Richard's silence was answer enough. Bennett turned back to Williams. "Major, I want a full briefing on Operation Watchful Eye in my office in 1 hour. And I want to know how close you are to identifying the source of our security leaks." "Actually, sir," Maya spoke up, "I believe today's events may have given us exactly what we needed." She looked pointedly at Chen, who was now visibly sweating. As they left the interview room, Maya felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Her cover was blown, but the operation was moving forward. The accusations against her had unexpectedly accelerated their investigation. In the hallway, Richards caught up to her. "Sergeant Johnson," he said, his voice low, "I was just doing my duty." "You have to understand—" "I understand perfectly, Staff Sergeant," Maya cut him off coolly. "You saw what you expected to see. A black woman who couldn't possibly be more than she appeared. You never once considered I might be a fellow soldier." She left him standing there, his face a mix of shame and defensiveness, and joined Major Williams. They had work to do, real work, now that the pretense was over. And somewhere in the tangle of accusations and counter-accusations, Maya was certain they would find the thread that led to their real security leak. As they walked toward Bennett's office, Williams gave her a sidelong glance. "You know," he said quietly, "for what it's worth, I think Richards and his friends just did us a huge favor." Maya raised an eyebrow. "How so, sir?" "They were so busy watching you that they got sloppy about watching themselves." He smiled grimly. "Sometimes the best way to catch a spy is to let them think they've caught one first." Colonel Bennett's office was larger than Maya expected, with windows overlooking the parade grounds. The walls were lined with photographs of Bennett throughout his career, standing alongside various dignitaries and fellow officers. Bennett himself sat behind a large desk, reviewing the file Major Williams had just handed him. Maya stood at attention beside Williams, waiting for the colonel to finish reading. The past few hours had been a whirlwind since her confrontation with Richards at the military police station. Finally, Bennett looked up. 6 months, he said, shaking his head slightly. 6 months you've had one of my best intelligence specialists working undercover as a waitress, and you never thought to inform me." Williams remained steady. "Sir, Operation Watchful Eye was authorized at division level. Compartmentalization was deemed essential. The fewer people who knew, the better chance of catching the leak," Bennett finished for him. "I understand the protocol, Major. I just don't appreciate being kept in the dark about operations on my base." He turned his attention to Maya. "And you, Sergeant Johnson. Quite an impressive performance from what I hear." "Thank you, sir," Maya replied. "At ease, both of you. Sit down." Bennett gestured to the chairs in front of his desk. "Now tell me what you've learned and why you think Technical Sergeant Chen is involved." Maya glanced at Williams, who nodded for her to proceed. "Over the past 6 months, I've been tracking patterns of behavior among personnel who frequent Lou's diner," she began. 3 weeks ago, Richards and his group started coming in regularly. I noticed they often met with other soldiers, including Chen, who on multiple occasions brought documents marked classified, which is a clear violation of security protocols, Bennett noted. "Yes, sir. Yesterday, Chen brought another classified folder to a meeting with Richards and his associates. They were careful to keep the contents hidden, but their conversation suggested they were sharing information that shouldn't have been discussed in a public setting." Bennett frowned. "That's suspicious, but not conclusive evidence of leaking classified information." "There's more, sir," Maya continued. "While working at the diner, I documented 3 instances where Chen met with individuals who aren't military personnel. On each occasion, he arrived with his laptop and documents. After these meetings, we recorded unauthorized access to our communication systems using Chen's credentials." Bennett's eyebrows rose. "You have proof of this?" Major Williams pulled out another folder. "System logs, sir. The unauthorized access always occurred within hours of Chen's meetings at the diner. The timing is too consistent to be coincidental. And the 3 information leaks we've confirmed over the past months all contained data that Chen had access to, Maya added. Bennett reviewed the new documents thoughtfully. What about Richards and his group? Are they involved or were they just useful idiots? Williams and Maya exchanged glances. That's still unclear, sir, Williams admitted. Richards seemed genuinely convinced that Sergeant Johnson was a spy. His suspicion might have been based on prejudice rather than knowledge of her actual activities. Or, Maya suggested, Chen could have deliberately pointed Richards in my direction to create a distraction. Get everyone looking at the suspicious waitress instead of at him. Bennett nodded slowly. A plausible theory. What's your next move? The MPs are searching Chen's quarters and office as we speak, Williams said. We've also placed Richards and his associates under observation, though not under arrest. Without more concrete evidence, we can't hold them. And what about you, Sergeant? Bennett asked Maya directly. Your cover is blown. What role do you see for yourself in this operation now? Maya sat up straighter. Sir, I believe I can still be useful. Chen doesn't know exactly what information I've gathered or who I've reported to. If we bring him in for questioning, I'd like to be present. Bennett considered this for a moment, then nodded. Agreed. Your insight could be valuable. He checked his watch. The search of Chen's quarters should be wrapping up soon. Let's see what they found. An hour later, Maya found herself in an observation room adjacent to one of the base's interrogation rooms. Through the one-way glass, she could see Technical Sergeant Chen sitting alone at a table, nervously tapping his fingers. He looked smaller somehow, without the confidence he usually projected at the diner. The door to the observation room opened, and Lieutenant Garcia entered with a cardboard box. Found these in Chen's quarters, sir, Garcia reported, placing the box on the table, hidden in a false bottom in his footlocker. Williams opened the box and began spreading its contents across the table. There were several USB drives, a small notebook filled with what looked like coded entries, and a burner phone. Initial analysis of one of the drives shows copies of classified documents. Garcia continued, including deployment schedules for the upcoming joint exercise with NATO forces. Bennett's expression darkened. That exercise was only finalized 3 days ago. Information that sensitive shouldn't have left the secure server, let alone been copied to a personal drive. Maya examined the notebook. These look like payment records, she said, pointing to recurring entries. Dates and amounts. And look, they correspond to the dates of the confirmed leaks. Williams checked the dates against their timeline. She's right. Chen wasn't just leaking information. He was selling it. To whom? Bennett asked. We're still working on that, sir, Garcia replied. The burner phone might give us some answers once the tech team analyzes it. Bennett turned to Maya. Sergeant Johnson, are you ready to face Chen? Maya nodded. Yes, sir. Good, Major Williams will lead the interrogation. You'll observe at first, then join when I give the signal. Bennett's eyes were steely. Let's see how he reacts when he realizes exactly who has been watching him. Inside the interrogation room, Chen looked up nervously as Major Williams entered with a folder. Williams sat down across from him without speaking, opened the folder and began reviewing its contents as if Chen wasn't even there. After a full minute of uncomfortable silence, Chen broke. Sir, there's been a misunderstanding. I can explain about the documents. Can you? Williams asked mildly, still not looking up from the folder. Can you explain why classified deployment schedules were found on personal drives in your quarters? Or why your login credentials were used to access secure servers at odd hours? Or perhaps you'd like to explain these. He pulled out copies of the notebook pages showing the payment records. Chen's face drained of color. I want a lawyer. That's your right, Williams acknowledged. But before we go down that road, I think there's someone you should meet. He glanced toward the observation window and nodded. Maya took a deep breath and entered the interrogation room. The look on Chen's face when he saw her in uniform was worth every tense moment of the past 6 months. His mouth actually fell open. Hello again, Maya said, taking a seat beside Williams. Coffee's not as good here as at Lou's, I'm afraid. Chen stared at her in disbelief. You're military? Sergeant Maya Johnson, military intelligence, she confirmed. I've been watching you for quite some time, Technical Sergeant Chen. Those meetings at the diner weren't as private as you thought. Chen swallowed hard, his eyes darting between Maya and Williams. I don't know what you're talking about. 3 weeks ago, Maya said calmly. You met with a man in a blue jacket at the diner. You passed him a folder under the table and he left you an envelope in return. The next day, deployment details for units in Eastern Europe appeared on a foreign intelligence site. Chen's right eye twitched slightly. 2 weeks before that, Maya continued, you brought your laptop to meet a woman who claimed to be a journalist. After 30 minutes of conversation, you turned your screen to show her something. That evening, your credentials were used to access personnel files of undercover operatives. Williams took over. The pattern is clear, Chen. What's not clear is why. Money? He tapped the notebook. These amounts suggest it was profitable but not life-changing. Was there something else? Ideology? Blackmail? Chen's lawyer bravado crumbled. You don't understand the pressure, he whispered. They approached me after my sister got sick. The medical bills. He trailed off, looking down at his hands. It was just supposed to be low-level stuff at first. Nothing that would hurt anyone. But it escalated, Maya said, not as a question. Chen nodded miserably. They kept asking for more. Said they'd expose me if I tried to back out. Who is they? Williams pressed. Chen hesitated. I only dealt with 2 people directly. Never got real names. But their accents were Eastern European. They paid in cash and cryptocurrency. Williams made a note. And Richards? How does he fit into this? He doesn't, Chen said quickly. Not directly. But he was getting suspicious of unusual activity. I might have mentioned that the new waitress asked a lot of questions. He glanced guiltily at Maya. I figured if he focused on you, he'd leave me alone. So you deliberately pointed him in my direction, Maya said, feeling a surge of anger that she carefully controlled. Used his prejudices to create a smokescreen. Chen couldn't meet her eyes. It wasn't personal. I was desperate. It's always personal to the person being targeted, Maya replied evenly. The interrogation continued for another hour, with Chen gradually revealing more details about his contacts and the information he had leaked. By the end, Maya felt a complex mix of emotions. Satisfaction at having finally identified their leak, disgust at Chen's betrayal, and a strange sense of sympathy for the mess he'd made of his life. As they left the interrogation room, Williams turned to her. Good work, Sergeant. Your patience and observation skills paid off. Thank you, sir. What happens now? Chen will face court-martial, Williams replied. His cooperation might mitigate his sentence, but his military career is over. As for Richards and his group, sir, Maya prompted when Williams paused. Colonel Bennett wants to see them in his office immediately. I think you should be there. 30 minutes later, Maya stood at attention in Bennett's office as Richards, Wilson, and Torres were marched in by military police. The 3 men froze when they saw Maya, their expressions a mixture of confusion and discomfort. Gentlemen, Bennett said, his voice deceptively calm, you've had quite the 24 hours, haven't you? Making accusations, disrupting an authorized intelligence operation, and potentially compromising an investigation into actual espionage. Richard stepped forward slightly. Sir, we acted on what we believed was suspicious behavior. Save it, Staff Sergeant, Bennett cut him off. Your concerns were based on assumptions and prejudices, not facts. You never once considered that Sergeant Johnson might be military, did you? The silence in the room was answer enough. While you were busy profiling an undercover intelligence officer based on your own biases, Technical Sergeant Chen was selling classified information right under your noses. Bennett's voice rose slightly. Information that could have endangered your fellow soldiers. Maya watched Richards's face as the implications sank in. He had been so focused on her that he had missed the real threat at his own table. Sir, Richards began, his voice subdued. I made a mistake. I apologize, Bennett shook his head. Don't apologize to me, Staff Sergeant. Richards turned to Maya, meeting her eyes directly for the first time. Sergeant Johnson, I'm sorry for my assumptions and behavior. There's no excuse. Maya nodded once professionally. Acknowledged, Staff Sergeant. Bennett wasn't finished. All 3 of you will be attending additional training on bias awareness and security protocols. And you'll be writing detailed reports explaining exactly how your actions could have compromised this operation. Yes, sir, the 3 replied in unison. Dismissed. As they filed out, Maya felt a sense of closure. The operation hadn't gone as planned, but they had achieved their primary objective, identifying and stopping the source of the leaks. And perhaps, just perhaps, Richards and his friends had learned something valuable in the process. 2 weeks had passed since the revelation of Chen's betrayal. Fort Bennet hummed with activity as soldiers prepared for the rescheduled joint exercise with NATO forces. The leaked deployment plans had been completely revised, security protocols overhauled, and a sense of normalcy was slowly returning to the base. Maya sat in the conference room, scrolling through the final report on Operation Watchful Eye. The operation had been officially closed yesterday, with commendations for all involved, especially her. She still found it strange to walk around the base in uniform after months of playing a waitress. Some mornings she caught herself reaching for an apron that wasn't there. The door opened and Major Williams entered with a folder under his arm. "Good news, Sergeant," he said, placing the folder in front of her. "Your new assignment came through." Maya opened it eagerly. After the success of her undercover operation, she'd been hoping for something challenging. The assignment details made her eyebrows rise. "Intelligence training officer?" she asked, looking up at Williams. He smiled. "Not just any training. You'll be developing and leading a new program on recognizing and countering unconscious bias in intelligence gathering and assessment. Colonel Bennett specifically requested you for the position." Maya felt a surge of pride mixed with surprise. This wasn't what she had expected, but the opportunity resonated with her on a personal level. "The first class starts next week," Williams continued. 20 students, including some familiar faces. Maya knew immediately who he meant. Richards and his group? Williams nodded. The colonel felt it would be educational for them. A small smile played at the corner of Maya's lips. "I imagine it will be." Later that afternoon, Maya found herself making one last visit to Lou's diner. She'd been so busy with debriefings and reports that she hadn't had a chance to properly say goodbye to the place that had been her second home for 6 months. As she pulled into the parking lot, she realized she'd missed the little diner more than she had expected. The familiar bell jingled as she pushed open the door. The lunch rush was over, and only a few customers lingered over coffee and pie. Lou looked up from behind the counter and broke into a wide grin. "Well, look who's here," he called out. "The secret agent returns." Maya laughed as she took a seat at the counter. After her cover was blown, Lou had been briefed on the basics of her assignment, though many details remained classified. "Not so secret anymore," she replied. "How's business?" "Quieter without all those soldiers watching each other," Lou said, pouring her a cup of coffee without asking. "Though I gotta say I miss my best waitress. These new kids don't know a coffee cup from a teapot." "Sorry about the deception, Lou." He waved it away. "You were doing your job, and from what little they told me, you did it damn well." He leaned on the counter. "Besides, you really could wait tables. That wasn't an act. You worked hard." "I did," Maya acknowledged, taking a sip of the coffee. It tasted different now that she wasn't constantly on alert, listening for snippets of classified information. "I wanted to come by and thank you for everything." "You're welcome anytime," Lou said sincerely, with or without the secret identity. The bell jingled again and Maya glanced toward the door. Her body tensed automatically when she saw Richards enter, followed by Wilson and Torres. They spotted her immediately, and there was an awkward moment of silent recognition. Maya hadn't seen them since that day in Colonel Bennett's office. She wondered what they were doing here, and why they all looked so uncomfortable. To her surprise, Richards approached the counter while his friends hung back near the door. "Sergeant Johnson," he greeted her formally. "I heard you might be here." Maya nodded coolly. Staff Sergeant Richards. An uncomfortable silence stretched between them. Lou, sensing the tension, busied himself at the other end of the counter. Finally, Richards spoke again. "I came to apologize again, properly this time." He took a deep breath. What we did was wrong on multiple levels. We let our assumptions cloud our judgment, and we almost compromised an important operation because of it. Maya studied his face, looking for signs of insincerity. She found none. "I appreciate the apology," she said carefully. "There's more," Richards continued. "The reason we came..." He gestured to Wilson and Torres, who approached reluctantly, each carrying a small gift bag. "We wanted to give you these." Maya accepted the bags with surprise. "What's this about?" "Open them," Richards suggested. The first bag contained a coffee mug with "World's Most Undercover Waitress" printed on it. Despite herself, Maya smiled. The second bag held a framed certificate that read, Honorary Member, Fort Bennett Security Team, with her name written in careful calligraphy. The mug was Wilson's idea, Richards explained. He thought you might need it for your new office. The certificate was Torres. He's good with that fancy writing. Thank you, Maya said, genuinely touched by the gesture. This is unexpected. Richards looked down at his hands. We're all assigned to your new training class next week. Colonel Bennett made sure of that. I wanted to clear the air before then. Make sure you know that we respect what you did, and we're ready to learn. Maya considered him for a moment. The man standing before her seemed different from the arrogant, suspicious soldier who had confronted her 2 weeks ago. Humbled, perhaps, or simply more aware. I look forward to having you in class, she said finally. Richards nodded, looking relieved. We'll let you get back to your coffee. See you next week, Sergeant. After they left, Lou returned to her end of the counter. Friends of yours? He asked, eyeing the gifts. Colleagues, Maya corrected. And students, apparently. Huh, Lou said thoughtfully. Life's funny that way. The following Monday morning, Maya stood in the briefing room watching as soldiers filed in for the first session of the new training program. She wore her dress uniform, medals displayed prominently on her chest. The room gradually filled, and right on time, Richards, Wilson, and Torres entered. Taking seats in the second row, at precisely 900, Colonel Bennett entered, and everyone stood at attention. As you were, Bennett said, moving to the front of the room to stand beside Maya. Good morning. Today marks the beginning of a new initiative here at Fort Bennett. Recent events have highlighted the need for specialized training in recognizing and countering bias in intelligence operations. His gaze swept the room, lingering briefly on Richards and his group. The consequences of unchecked bias can be severe, not just for individuals who are unfairly targeted, but for the effectiveness of our operations and the safety of our personnel. Bennett gestured to Maya. Sergeant, Johnson's recent undercover work revealed both the prevalence of such bias and the dangers it presents. She has first-hand experience with these issues, making her uniquely qualified to lead this training. Maya stepped forward, feeling the weight of 20 pairs of eyes on her. Thank you, Colonel, she said before addressing the class. Over the next 4 weeks, we will examine how bias influences intelligence gathering, analysis, and decision-making. You will learn to recognize your own unconscious biases and develop strategies to mitigate their impact on your work. She caught Richard's eye, and he gave her a small nod of acknowledgement. We'll begin with a case study, Maya continued. Operation Watchful Eye. Some of you may be familiar with aspects of this operation already. A ripple of knowing looks passed through the room. The operation had 2 unexpected outcomes, Maya explained. First, it identified a security leak that had been compromising sensitive information for months. Second, it revealed how easily bias can misdirect suspicion and undermine security efforts. She clicked a button, and the screen behind her displayed a photograph of Lou's diner. This was my post for 6 months. My mission was to monitor conversations and identify potential security threats. Instead, I became the target of suspicion because I didn't fit certain people's image of a soldier. Several students shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This isn't about assigning blame, Maya clarified. It's about recognizing patterns and improving our effectiveness. The soldiers who suspected me were doing what they thought was right. Their mistake wasn't in being vigilant. It was in allowing assumptions to replace objective assessment. For the next hour, Maya walked them through the operation, highlighting moments where bias had influenced perceptions and decisions. She was careful not to single out Richards and his group, focusing instead on the systemic issues at play. As the class ended and the soldiers began to file out, Maya noticed Technical Sergeant Rivera, the grandfatherly regular from the diner, lingering behind. That was excellent. Sergeant Johnson, he said when the room had emptied. You have a gift for teaching. Thank you, sir, Maya replied. It's new territory for me, Rivera smiled. Sometimes our most valuable contributions come from unexpected directions. He hesitated, then added, You know, I suspected what you were doing at the diner. Maya blinked in surprise. You did? 30 years in intelligence teaches you to recognize certain things, he said with a shrug. Your questions were too precise, your memory too good for a typical waitress. But unlike some, He glanced meaningfully toward the door where Richards had exited. I considered all possibilities before jumping to conclusions. Why didn't you say anything? Maya asked. Wasn't my operation, Rivera replied simply. And you were doing good work. Sometimes the best thing a veteran can do is stay out of the way and let the next generation shine. He picked up his notebook. Looking forward to tomorrow's class, Sergeant. After Rivera left, Maya remained in the empty classroom, reflecting on how differently her mission might have ended if Richards had approached it with Rivera's perspective. The contrast was precisely why this training mattered. Her phone buzzed with a text from Major Williams. How did it go? Maya typed back, Good start. They're listening. She gathered her materials and headed for the door. 6 months ago, she had begun a mission to find a leak, posing as someone she wasn't. Now she had a new mission, teaching others to see beyond appearances and assumptions. As she walked across the base toward her office, several soldiers nodded respectfully in her direction. She returned each acknowledgement, noting how different it felt to be seen, truly seen for who she was. The morning sun glinted off her sergeant's stripes, and Maya smiled to herself. No more hiding behind an apron. No more pretending to be less than she was. She had earned her place here, and now everyone knew it. And somewhere across town, Lou was probably telling customers about his famous waitress who turned out to be a military intelligence officer, adding more details with each telling until the story became almost mythical. Maya made a mental note to visit the diner again soon. After all, nobody made coffee quite like Lou did, and sometimes the best conversations happened over a simple cup of coffee, once all the pretenses were set aside.